Zach was very clear from the beginning of this case. I'm taking this case to trial. I'm not settling. It doesn't matter how much money they offer me. I'm not settling this case. I need to clear my name.
And I want to use this as an opportunity to shine light on a real problem in the U.S. And that's what we did. I would hope that after this experience, not only CNN, but other mainstream media outlets would use it as an opportunity to say, hey, we have to be more careful in how we do our reporting. We have a big responsibility. And, we can't just make up the narrative.
On November 11, 2021, CNN aired a segment on The Lead with Jake Tapper discussing security contractors for evacuations amidst the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. During that segment, CNN took aim at Navy veteran Zachary Young, running an on-screen graphic with the text, "Black Markets," suggesting that he was illegally profiteering off of desperate Afghans. In June 2022, Young sued CNN for $1 billion. And just earlier this year, a jury unanimously found CNN guilty of defamation. The jury awarded Young $5 million in compensatory damages and found CNN liable for punitive damages as well. Both Young and CNN came to a private settlement on punitive damages. What follows is my interview with Zachary Young and his attorney, Vel Friedman. Welcome, Zachary Young and Vel Friedman. I'm so glad you all are both here. It's great to have you. Let's dive right in. Now that the lawsuit has officially concluded, how are you feeling about the outcome, and is it what you hoped for?
Sounds like a question for Zach.
Okay, I'll go first. It's probably for both of us, but I can tell you I'm very happy with the outcome, and I wasn't expecting it to be over this quickly. I think Vel would agree that we were pretty dug in and prepared to take it to the very end. If that was 2 or 3 years in appeals, we were prepared to do it. But considering the outcome, I feel that we sent the message that we wanted to send. I hope that it was received as intended, but we'll see about that in the future.
When you first heard your name linked with Black Markets, what went through your mind? Did you know instantly that would change your life forever?
I didn't anticipate all of this 3 years of litigation and suing CNN and winning and seeing all the things that they had to say behind the scenes that resulted in us being able to prove actual malice, which hasn't been done before. I didn't anticipate any of that, but I knew instantly that it's not a good thing for someone to be called a black market operator, especially with somebody with my background. It means what it means. It's illegal or illicit activity in any dictionary, and I'm glad that the jury agreed with us on that.
Did you ever consider not pursuing the lawsuit, or was it clear from the start that you had to fight back?
I wanted to fight back. I mean, it's not in my nature to just lay down and accept what someone like CNN did to me. But for anyone that's ever in this position, this is not an easy road, even with the best lawyers, and I had the best lawyers on the planet for this. Proving defamation against a media defendant is very hard to do, and it's not just you don't like what they said about you. They use some harsh language. The ways that the media has to get out of trouble in the U.S. are unfathomable, and they tried all of them in our case. This was unique in that none of them were effective, but even with truth on your side, being able to make it to a jury is very, very, doesn't happen a lot. It's very difficult, very expensive, and the lawyers that are behind you have to be really willing to take it to the end. And I'll say that most of them are not willing to do that. Most lawyers will want to settle sooner rather than later. It's a lot of time that they invest. 3 years of litigation with a team of 9 lawyers is a tremendous investment. So you have to be very careful to make sure that your interests are really aligned. And I think Vel will agree, our first conversation was about just that. It was, I want to go to the very end. I'm not interested in settling. I want to clear my name, and I want to use this as an opportunity to shine light on a real problem in the U.S. And that's what we did.
Well, speaking of having the best lawyers on your side, I have a question for Vel. This obviously was a David versus Goliath type of battle, an individual going up an international entity like CNN. How do you prepare to go toe-to-toe with an institution that large and actually win?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you have the resources in the firm that you've chosen, so talking about this case at our firm, thank God we've been very successful. We've got many, many talented lawyers and sufficient resources to go up against a company like CNN. Not that we're worth anything like CNN, but you just need the minimum amount of force necessary to continue beating their lawyers. And so in this case, actually had CNN switching lawyers multiple times throughout the proceedings. But no matter who they brought, we were still able to win, thank God. So it doesn't. I understand, like, from the David and Goliath story, it's true. You have an individual, Zach, who's living in Austria going up against this massive corporation. But that's kind of the beauty of our American justice system, which is like once you're in court, you're all equal. And now it just really comes down to, are you making the right arguments? Are you using the right facts? Are you approaching this strategically? Or are you just trying to, litigate a case without thinking about the end result in trial? Zach was very clear from the beginning of this case. I'm taking this case to trial. I'm not settling. Doesn't matter how much money they offer me. I'm not settling this case. I need to clear my name. And so knowing that going in is super helpful because we litigate the case as if we're going to trial no matter what. And that's what we did. And so if you look, you'll see CNN move for summary judgment, for example, on all of the claims. We knew we were going to trial. So we filed strategic summary judgment motions to help position us better in trial. And at the end of the day, we just had the goal in our sights the whole time, and we were able to pull off the victory.
Yeah, I mean, as an outsider looking in, I don't have a legal background, but when I saw the texts and the emails and all the internal correspondence, I was like, this case seems like a slam dunk. Is that how it felt like for you, or were there ever any moments where there was doubt, or you were like, oh, I don't know if we're going to actually win this?
First of all, when we filed the case, we didn't have any of those text messages, right? So you have to file the case not knowing what it says internally at CNN. Certainly when we got those documents for CNN, we said, wow, like this is even worse than we thought it could be, right? And so from a case perspective, those text messages were great and did certainly increase our, outlook on the likelihood of our success. That being said, as Zach told you a moment ago, winning a defamation case, period, is difficult. Winning one against a media company is even more difficult. And winning punitive damages against a media company is unheard of. We haven't found another instance of a national media carrier like CNN being held liable for punitive damages since the Supreme Court's creation of the New York Times v. Sullivan protection, right? We haven't found it. I don't think it exists. So this is the first time in 50, 60 years that it's happened. And so, even with those text messages, there was certainly, an unknown of would the jury believe it? Would the jury think that we're telling the truth? Would the jury agree with us that CNN had actual malice, meaning that they published something they knew was false or had substantial doubts about whether it was really true, published it anyways? We had to show all those things, not just show them, but convince a jury that they deserve to be punished, that they did these things by clear and convincing evidence. It's a very high standard. It's not quite the beyond the reasonable doubt you see in criminal cases, but it's higher than 51%. And so the short answer to your question is the text messages were great, no question, but absolutely there was uncertainty throughout the whole thing. But no matter what CNN threw at us, Zach remained steadfast. He says, I got to clear my name and I've got to change media in the United States. So that's what we did.
I definitely get the need to clear your name. If I understand correctly, it looks like at some point Jake Tapper maybe issued a retraction on air, and I think some people would just wonder why not just accept CNN's apology, move on. So why wasn't that enough for you, Zachary? And then for Vel, how did their early admission shape your legal strategy?
Well, it wasn't really a retraction, and it wasn't Jake Tapper either.
Oh, okay.
It was somebody else filling in for him. He was out of work that day for some reason. And if you were to try to find it online now, you wouldn't be able to. It was a blurb in time, and if you missed it, it was gone. And it was merely correcting that the term black market was an error, and they didn't mean to imply that I was working in a black market. Then they spent 3 years trying to say, actually, we don't agree with that apology. We retract our correction, and we did mean black market. That was correct. It's just that black market doesn't mean what it means. Words don't mean what they mean. You should trust us to define words for you. So that was hard for me to wrap my mind around intellectually. I still don't quite understand it. But no, the correction was meaningless for me. It still is. And the fact that they spent 3 years in litigation arguing every absurd excuse that they could possibly come up with, including but not limited to, it was true because technically by saving 24 young females from terrorists, Mr. Young was in fact breaking laws and working on a black market, according to the terrorists, according to Sharia. Of course, that argument wasn't successful, but it gives you an example of the depths to which CNN was willing to sink to try to get out of trouble. And the more they did that, the more really ingrained this became in me, and I think in Vel too, that we really had to expose them. It got worse and worse, and the more they tried to dig their way out of it, their grave got deeper and deeper. And it accumulated, excuse me, with a jury of 6 people deciding unanimously that not only were they liable for defamation, but they also were liable for punitive damages, that threshold for actual malice, meaning they knew it was wrong and they said it anyway. We did that. So I'm very happy with the result. But the whole time, the 3 years that passed, it never got any better. It only got worse for me, just watching how they would go to any ends to try to just get out of trouble. And even at the end, I saw the comments they made. Their official spokesperson said that they'll take whatever lessons they can from this experience. That was their comment. And the reporter, Mark Hard, he's still on the air. So what those lessons were that they took away are a mystery to me. I would hope that after this experience, not only CNN, but other mainstream media outlets would use it as an opportunity to say, hey, we have to be more careful in how we do our reporting. We have a big responsibility. And, we can't just make up the narrative and assume that individuals won't fight back. I was hoping that would be the message, but I'm afraid the message was probably more like we have to be more careful and not get caught next time. We have to be more careful about how we talk internally. We have to not, maintain documents that are going to show up in discovery. That's my feelings personally. So I'm not sure that it really resonated with CNN in particular the way that I had hoped.
In terms of legal strategy off the apology, it puts CNN in a very precarious position. I think they issued the apology because there's this statute in Florida that allows you to avoid punitive damages if you apologize and retract within a certain period of time. But that statute, so they did it, I think, to take advantage of that statute. That's my assessment. The problem is that statute's very old and predates New York Times v. Sullivan, which already requires that you show actual malice, that they knew what they were publishing was false. In order to take advantage of the apology statute, it has to have been a good faith mistake. So, in fact, the apology didn't really help them from a legal perspective. And then, as they continued to litigate, they took the position exactly opposite from their apology, which was we did nothing wrong. Everything we said was right. And the only reason we apologized was a legal decision by the lawyers. Once they did that, we knew that they were in real trouble, right? Because that may work in front of a judge. And it did, right? Judge Henry said, well, they apologized to take advantage of the legal statute. That's a different story. And that's all well and fine in front of a highly educated, in the law judge who's able to understand those kind of technical legal arguments that, oh, it's for this purpose and not that purpose. But when you get in front of common sense people, when you get in front of a jury, explain to a jury how you apologized but did nothing wrong. How you apologized, did nothing wrong, didn't mean it. It was only your lawyers that made it. And based on the jury questions and some of the comments made by the jurors after the trial, that strategy backfired terribly on them. The jury was not impressed with this, oh, we apologize, it's a fake apology type thing.
Right. Exactly. Performance art. I remember watching the trial and seeing the judge say to, I believe, CNN's lawyer, David Axelrod, saying that his credibility was just about zero. And again, just an outsider looking in, I remember like being shocked. I was like, does this usually happen in court? So I guess my question is, was there a pivotal moment or a turning point where you knew either the jury or the momentum was on your side?
I think that the jury didn't hear that conversation. That back and forth between Judge Henry and David Axelrod took place outside the presence of the jury, so it didn't really have an effect in the outcome of the case. In terms of a pivotal moment of when the jury was on our side, there was a specific document in the case. It was a text message exchange between Zach and a woman called Jill Kornetsky. And in the text message exchange, Kornetsky's just going after Zach just really hard. And eventually Zach kind of snaps and says to her, like, get lost. I don't need to answer some spiteful BITCA on LinkedIn. And CNN made a big deal out of that document, the whole case. And from a legal perspective, it doesn't really have any relevance, but I think the tactic was make Zach seem like a not good guy, right? Don't give this guy money because he is a bad dude. During the case, we had focused really on the kind of like the message itself, where Zach says this, edgy thing to her. In preparing for trial, I went back and I read the entire exchange. When you read the entire exchange, I mean, she does come across as spiteful, right? Like, and so what we did at trial was we brought up before CNN could do it, we brought up that exchange, and Zach and I went through it line by line, and we read it to the jury. And at one point, the jury started laughing with how aggressive she was coming at Zach, right? I would say, did she stop now, Zach? Zach said, no, she didn't. And the jury was kind of like chuckling. And by the time I got to the portion of the message where Zach had called her this spiteful bee, the jury was nodding. When I read, yeah, they were nodding. There were 8 jurors there because we had 6 jurors, 2 alternates, and 6 of the 8 were female. And I saw, my back was, I saw 3 of them nodding along as I read the words Zach. Then you called her a spiteful bee. They were nodding. They were nodding like, yeah, she is. And Zach said, look, I thought he handled it so well. And he was just so sincere. And he says, listen, I regret using the profanity, right? I shouldn't have done that. I got kind of lost it. She called me a mercenary. That really touched, gets me upset. But she was spiteful, and I stand by that. And the jury was just nodding. And that, when I saw that, I knew we had defanged one of their biggest kind of tools in their accessory. And by the way, not through any kind of like trick. Like, that was the truth. It was just, I knew we had succeeded in conveying to the jury the reality of the situation, and not CNN's curated snippet of, Zach calling some woman on the internet a spiteful bee, right? No, that's not what it was. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is really great. So I don't know if it was a pivotal moment. That there wasn't any moment that was like, oh, we won, until they read the verdict and I knew we won. But that was I think a pivotal moment in the case for me is when that happened.
I think for Zachary, that moment when they come out with the verdict, what are the emotions going through? Is it, can you describe what that even feels like?
I was really in a state of shock as it was happening. I've watched the video and tried to put my mind back into that time space, but it was very intense. It was surreal, and it was a rush of excitement and panic, because we'd worked so hard for 3 years to get to that point. And it's one thing to know that it's going to happen eventually, but to be there in the moment where she stands up and she's about to announce the decision was very intense and very emotional. And then the second part, where they actually agreed that we had proven actual malice, was incredible.
So, as you mentioned, it was like a 3-year process, all building up to that moment, and then it turns out to be unanimous. What do you think that says about how the public views media accountability today?
I've thought a lot about that, and I have some concern because I, this case is an example of how much public trust in media has eroded in recent years. And the problem with that is when the public can't trust the media because they've destroyed that trust, they go other places for information. And just in my professional background as an intelligence officer, I can tell you that our adversaries have very active programs that have been going on since the Cold War, most notably Russia and China, focused on exploiting this phenomenon that we're seeing in the US, where people don't trust the media, they're going to go to Twitter, they're going to go to Facebook, go anywhere. And if you have something preconceived in your mind, no matter how insane it is, you can find it on the internet. And our adversaries know this, and they're taking advantage of it. So when I see what happened with CNN, in my case, it's very personal, but in the grander scheme of things, I see it as a real national security issue, that this is still going on. It's not getting better. It seems to be getting worse. Here was an opportunity to kind of correct the balance, at least to some degree, and I'm hoping that it had some effect in that direction.
I hope it has an effect. I think the message is very loud and clear, and definitely much needed. For Vel, some detractors might say, there's a movement to stifle the free press, stifle journalism. How do you strike that balance between holding the media accountable, but also, not limiting freedom of the press?
That's such an overblown concern. Like it's a concern that's being trumpeted, I believe, by folks that don't understand defamation law, because the law provides massive protection, not just to free speech, but to media in particular. Just incredible protection to the media. I mean, think about it. From the time New York Times v. Sullivan came down from the Supreme Court until Zach's case, I can't find another instance where a major national news character got held liable for punitive damages, right? You have to show that they knew what they were publishing was false, or that they knew it was probably not true and went for it anyways. Not like not like they should have known, they could have known. You have to show they actually knew they were publishing false statements, or that they actually knew they were publishing something they knew was probably not true. And you have to prove that they had a primary intent to harm the plaintiff, Zach, right? Why should someone be protected if that's what they're doing? If they're purposely publishing a falsehood that they are publishing with the primary intent to harm someone, why should they be protected? They shouldn't be protected. And so my answer to that is, hey, just do the bare minimum amount of work and don't purposely publish falsehoods. Don't try to target people and hurt them. And the First Amendment will protect you. So it's a lot of people yelling and screaming how it's an attempt to stifle the press, the media. It's not true. Our laws protect them, protect the media. And an outcome like this is so rare, because it really takes an outlier to get held liable like this.
Just a few more questions. Zachary, if you could rewind to the day when CNN aired the story, and let's say this time you had a platform to respond immediately, what would you say?
At the time, I wouldn't have been in a position to say anything. I was really in a total panic attack mode. I had a lot of things going through my mind. Some of it was rational, a lot of it wasn't. And it took several weeks, maybe even closer to a month, before I was really in a position where I could settle down and try to understand what happened and do a damage assessment. It's not something that happened immediately. So that day, it's really a blur. I'd never been on the news before. I'd never been on CNN. And for that to be my first exposure to the media, my face up there with the human trafficker, black market operative underneath it, I just didn't understand what was happening or why it happened. And it took some time to really comprehend that. But once I did, I knew that I had to take some kind of action to fight back and clear my name. And that's when I got in touch with Vel.
I think whenever we watch the news, it's easy to forget that, there's a very human element. These are actual people with lives and families that are being talked about. Did you find that you had a strong emotional support system that was with you along the way throughout this 3-year journey?
Absolutely. My wife has been incredibly supportive and with me every day. There've been a lot of bad days that she suffered through. CNN caused a lot of damage to me, but they also caused a lot of damage to her and my family. And also, Vel and my other lawyers, he probably forgot the number of text messages at the middle of the night asking legal questions. And, some of it was, genuine legal questions, and a lot of it was just, panic. So I know that I wasn't the easiest client for him to deal with for 3 years. And a lot of that was just a reflection of the issues that I was going through emotionally and psychologically as a result of what CNN did. So he's been very supportive of me.
I mean, so they portrayed you as a villain, to millions of viewers. How do you begin to rebuild your reputation after that? And do you know what's next for you after this ordeal?
I don't. I've actually been in contact with a few colleagues, though, that have reached out after the verdict, that had seen the trial. It was live streamed for 2 weeks, and have received several outreaches and congratulations that they're really happy for the outcome. But I understand why I was a pariah for years. Even though they knew me, they knew my background, they knew that I wasn't in fact a human trafficker. Just to have that label attached to you and all over the media, it's toxic. And I understand why they can't touch it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it makes a lot of sense. Now that my name has been cleared, I don't know yet. It's only been a month. So my wife and I are just kind of decompressing and trying to understand what life looks like post CNN. But it's been a real relief to have it over and not obsessing about this every day and every night. Sleeping a lot better, and I'm looking forward to life.
I'm glad to hear that. One final question for both of you. What does the outcome of the case mean for both of you on a personal as well as professional level?
I'll go first, Zach, or last?
You go first.
On a personal level, it's very satisfying. I mean, when you litigate a case like this, or at least, well, let me say it this way. When I litigate a case like this, I throw my heart and soul into it. I believe it. I only take cases that I believe in. I believe in the people that I represent, and I get very emotionally invested in the case succeeding. And, over the past 3 years, Zach and I have talked almost every day about everything you could think of. He's become a close friend of mine. And so the success, being able to win for him meant a huge deal to me personally. Professionally, it's been great too, because it was both live streamed across the world. So a lot of people got to see the work we do. Now, we do this all the time, but people don't usually get to see it because usually courts don't have cameras in them. And so it was really nice for my friends, my family members, and my colleagues to see me up there and speaking in court and handling trial. They don't usually get a chance to do that. And so I got a lot of really nice notes about how great we were and how great the team was and how great Zach was. So that was great. And of course, it's a major accomplishment. It's, I think, the first time, as I said before, that punitive damages have been found like this in just forever. And so it's a cool feather in your cap to have that you've accomplished something that not many other lawyers have ever accomplished. So, I mean, overall, professionally and personally, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's been a great experience for me, just the process of it, but the outcome has been fantastic. And I really hope that this is something that's been noticed by a lot of people and by a lot of media outlets, even if they're not reporting on it. And I hope that it's had a positive effect on the way they do business moving forward. And for me personally, I plan to stay very vocal about this experience and willing to talk to anybody who wants to listen about what I went through with Vel for 3 years And I want to make sure that this isn't something that's just swept under the carpet and goes away. Because if I wanted to do that, I could have done it 2 years ago and settled. It was very important for me that this went all the way to a jury and we actually showed the world what CNN did. And I don't believe that it's an outlier. I think that this is normal business practice, and not just at CNN. So I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that that message is spread as far and as wide as possible, just like CNN did to me.
Awesome. I know I said that was the last question. I actually have one more just because I know this was super long. If there was, and for you, Zach, but if you want to chime in, Val, that's totally cool. If there's one takeaway that you want every single viewer just to know and take away from this video and your story, what would that be?
One takeaway would be that you can fight back and you should fight back. But that being said, there has to be a big caveat. You have to do it the right way with the right partners, with the right law firm. That's the biggest lesson. And if you make a mistake, you won't have the same outcome. They have a lot of resources. They know all the tricks. I know because they tried all of them in our case. And if you don't have the right team behind you, you're not going to do it. So fight back, but make sure that you do your research and have the right team behind you.
Awesome. Zachary, Val, thank you so much for sharing your story. Your fight for accountability has definitely struck a chord, and we appreciate your time and insights.